This is a heck of a turnout. I guess a lot of people here want to have their houses redesigned or something. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Politics and Prose. I'm Brad Graham, the co-owner of the bookstore, along with my wife, Lissa Muscatine, and it's a special pleasure and treat for me to be introducing Mark McInturff, who's here to talk about his new book, Homework, New Houses, Changed Houses, Not Houses. It's a special pleasure because I've known Mark for more than 20 years and have entrusted him to design not only the house that my family has lived in, but also to redesign parts of this store, including the coffee house and an expansion that we did several years ago into what had been the dry cleaners next door. Mark's an immensely talented architect. I understand that a number of you are also old clients of his, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but his name, as I'm sure you've noticed, turns up on any list of the best DC architects. He's known to favor modern designs that reflect lots of creativity and beauty, but he doesn't necessarily impose his views on his clients. I certainly can attest to his openness to the desires and preferences of clients. And in fact, Mark and I had, I would say, some rather intense discussions over elements of the house that he drew for my family, so much so that he once described me as his most involved client. By that, I think he meant I was truly a huge pain in the ass. Nevertheless, we've remained in touch. Obviously, he's here today, so I don't bear any resentments, and I continue going back to him for architectural project after architectural project. Mark's a DC native who received his degree in architecture from the University of Maryland 50 years ago. I think that was the first class of graduates with architecture degrees or something. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I remember when they got computers, and could start designing things, and wow, there was a lot of glee in his practice at that point. He taught at the University of Maryland for many years, through the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, and he's also taught at the Catholic University of America. And since 1986, he's maintained a small practice in Bethesda. Over the years, given the nonstop demand for his service, Mark easily could have greatly expanded his office, but he's preferred to limit his staff to just a few very fortunate people while taking on work that ranges across residential, commercial, and institutional projects. His firm has received more than 350 design awards, and photos of his work have frequently appeared in local, national, and international publications. He's published 3 previous books showcasing his designs. Homework, like the earlier books, features not only full-color photographs, but detailed plans and diagrams and thoughtful commentary and insight into the process behind the designs. Nearly 50 projects are featured, including new and renovated houses, commercial enterprises, and cultural centers. My favorite few pages in the book just happen to show politics and prose. Here at the store, he's helped us do 3 things at various times: spruce up the retail area, expand the coffee house, and most recently build out some office space for our staff that you don't even see. It's over in what used to be the back of the old dry cleaners area. In fact, Mark won an award for that office design. That wasn't really the point, to win an award, but it was certainly a nice after-the-fact recognition. And you'll see some of the photos of this during this afternoon's presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mark McInturff.
This is everything I wanted it to be. This is, it's like my living room, because I know you all. I have so many clients here, and so many colleagues, and so many friends. There are very few people, and teachers, former teachers, that it's just, I'm at home. A couple things I wanted to mention sort of administratively, there's going to be a book signing after the event right here, and there's also going to be a reception. We've commandeered, I'm a child of the 60s. We've liberated the cafe starting right after this, and I'll be up here signing, and that'll be going on, and I'll come down and join you. If you are a client of ours, if you have built any of our projects, you're a carpenter, you're a builder, your money doesn't work here, go to the front when everyone's buying their books, leave them your name. I'm buying. It's my gift to you. So with that, I will. And two very special people here today. My granddaughter Anna, who's climbing all over her mother right there, is the youngest in the group, and the person who came farthest there she is. And the person who came farthest in the front row is my daughter Marissa, who flew here Friday from Barcelona, where she lives, to be here with you today. So this, as I sometimes say on vacation, is the most fun I've ever had. So we're here to talk about this book, and I'm not going to go through it all. Most of what's in it will appear in one or two photographs, and I'm not going to take it in a monograph form. I'm not going to talk about, here's a project with 2 dogs and 3 cats and any of that stuff. It's going to be more like themes that I see that weave through the books. And every time we make a book, this is the 4th, it's a time to kind of pause and look at what you've been doing and kind of make some generalizations about it, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So here you see the 4 books. A little bit about the office, as Brad said. I've always kept a small office. I've noticed that as offices get larger, the person in charge is now a manager, and everybody else is a designer. I only want to be a designer. I manage because I have to in order to be able to design. So right now we're 5 people. We've never been bigger than 7. And if you look at the numbers under these people, these are not our ages, even though some of us could pass for that. But definitely the woman on the left, Julia Jeffs, is not 8. That's how long everybody's been with the firm. And collectively, that's 111 years. And that is very, very rare, and I would say maybe unrepeated in this country. I don't know, because people don't track these things. But for me, working together, I sometimes say we're a little bit like the Rolling Stones, but younger and without the substance abuse. But that it's about just being together all that time, and the institutional knowledge. It allows us to punch way above our weight, and you'll see some projects that I think exhibit that. The lower left picture is where we practice. It's the building on the left is the house I live in. I bought 4 shacks a very long time ago for less than any of you paid for your last car, and combined 2 of them into my house, and the other 2 became the office. So my commute is not the length of this building. It's more like the width of this building. And I won't tell you how many years that has kept me off the road. That's been wonderful in terms of having no commute. And then the picture on the lower right is Julia Heine, who's here today, who has worked with me every one of these years, has always taken almost all of our photographs, all the award submissions, some design work, and most importantly for today, edited all 4 books. And I could not do this without her. I don't have the patience. I do not have the patience to put a book together. She does. So, and by the way, our publisher loves her. I think they're trying to scoop her away to Austria, which is where they are. When we have a book, or when I'm meeting with a new client, I hand them whatever the most recent book is, and I say, if you open to any 4 pages, and it doesn't matter what 4 pages, they will not look alike. There is no shtick that we have. There is no house style. We don't try and do recognizable work. We try and do work that's tailored to the situation. So on the upper left, you see a house that is I think, a beautiful orthodox modern white steel and glass and concrete. It's made of concrete. House in Virginia. On the right is a house that has no paint. It's copper, it's stone, it's steel, and it's glass. And it couldn't be any more different than the house on the left. And I'm proud to say that we did both of these houses. The house on the lower left involves a lot of color, and I'm going to talk about color later, so I won't dwell on it right now. But a lot of our projects do, some don't. We don't know going in which way it's going to go. And then finally, if anybody thinks we do big houses only, this is a 500 square foot house. It was a 400 square foot house. We added 100 square feet. And if you see it in the book, you'll see that we're able to change the dimensions of rooms with sliding partitions and sliding doors. It's an Asian house. So what is it that makes these differences? Why can I say that? Why can I say that if you do this with these 4 pages, what will bring it about? And the subject of this talk in the next half hour or so or less is the differences. So going back to the first house you see there, I'm going to actually make a cultural connection here. And one of the reasons for the differences, let me back up a second. One of the reasons for the differences in all our work is essentially if I turned the camera around and looked at all of you. Washington is an amazing place to be an architect because we have a phenomenally educated populace. We have an international populace. We have an incredibly diverse populace to a degree that when I find myself in flyover country, I can't even imagine practicing there. And so a lot of the differences are really coming from the feedback that with and the direction we're getting from clients. And I think Brad alluded to that. I appreciate that. This house was for a couple where one of the couple was from a culture of courtyard buildings, courtyard houses. Courtyard houses are global except in this country for whatever reason, but China, Japan, Italy, in Pompeii, Northern Africa, all kinds of cultures build around courtyards. And so they came to me, and in the first minute, they were saying, well, what we want, just because this was sort of part of our memory of the ways to make a building, what we want is a house where there's a courtyard in the middle and the spaces to both sides, but our climate here doesn't really want an open courtyard, put a roof on it. And I said, done. We just designed the house. It took 1 minute and 4 years. And you know, there's a famous Swiss architect once said, a great house is a simple plan, floor plan or diagram, and exquisite detail. And this house nails that. It's the simplest possible plan. We took 1 minute, and then we detailed it for 4 years. This is another cultural situation where, for a client from Jamaica who we built actually for in Rehoboth Beach here, wants to build a house for their multi-generation family in Jamaica on a hillside overlooking the Caribbean. I forgot to, I want to mention the people who worked on this. On the previous house, it was Peter Noonan and Colleen Healy. Julia Jeffs is working with me on this one. And so there's a house in Jamaica that is really a collection of houses. So and it sleeps 15 people. So it's designed like a little village that all clusters around the kind of main living spaces. On the other hand, worked on by Jeff McInturff, who is, yes, my son. Here's a house north of Baltimore that has no paint in it. And it's not that I have something against paint. My client basically said, I want all of the materials to speak for themselves. So there is concrete masonry units, there is steel, there is glass, and there is wood. None of that is treated in any way. And so the building speaks entirely for its materiality. You'll see in all of our work a great attention to structure and to detail. I don't have time to tell the story about these windows. The people who sold the windows were in Texas. The window frames came from China and took a year to get here. The glass came from Indiana, and we all went up to Baltimore to watch the glass get installed by a robot the size of this lectern. It was fantastic. There's a house some of you may know because you can see it from above Key Bridge as you cross the bridge in the center, and it's a house that we've now worked for 3 times. I always say that when we do a house and someone sells it, we're like the chandelier. We convey with the house. And so we've conveyed twice. The first time we built it for bachelor number 1. who renovated part of it and then got married and they moved away. Bachelor number 2 bought it, did more renovations on the parts we hadn't done, got married and moved away. Bachelor number 3 got married. And so we got to actually, stay with the house and wrap up the kind of rest of it. And one of the things we did here, I worked on this with Colleen Healy again, is we just changed the whole sensibility of the house by painting the windows white. And I remember my friend Bob Gurney, who's an excellent architect, when I was doing the first project, we were talking about the windows, and he said, what color are they going to be? And I said, they're going to be black, like industrial windows. And he said, they could be white. And for like 20 years, I was thinking, they could have been white. So they're white. Thanks, Bob. And then moving into color, color is very subjective. Some people want to use it, some people don't. We're cool either way. This is a house for Alan Canner, an excellent general contractor with added dimensions who we love to work with. And it had been a 1-story box on a basement, and now it's a 2-story box on a basement. And at some point, it became clear we were going to do a black metal mysterious box. This is in Tacoma Park. And that we would use color. And in talking about color, I pulled out a painting by Richard Diebenkorn from his Ocean Park series, which you see in the lower left. And I said, what if we used this family? And we just did it. We just, as a way to choose color. You don't go to a paint store. You go to Rembrandt. There are other people who play with color. So we don't do that all the time either, but it was like a little game. And then, so in another project that we finished in the last couple of years in North Bethesda, just a renovation done entirely with an eraser. All we did was take out walls and ceilings and then apply color with where we wanted. One of the clients is African American, so I brought African American artists, which is very easy in Washington. You've got Sam Gilliam and just all kinds of people. But I also took the Quilts of Gee's Bend, and many of you know the Quilts of Gee's Bend because they had a show at the Smithsonian. It's an African-American community in the South where, after generations of quilting, their composition started to drift into abstraction, and they're fantastic. So we chose a quilt, and if they're here, they're going to remind me that's not the one we chose. I couldn't find it, but it's close enough. So the colors are taken from that. It was a way of connecting to the people and to culture. So what else makes different? And obviously context does, where you're building and what you're doing. But this is a tale of let's just make a tale of 2 lobbies. These are both lobbies. The one on the left for the Watergate, it's 2 residential lobbies in the Watergate in the same site. And on the right is a renovation of a big building in Baltimore. And they're both lobbies. They both do the same thing. People come in the front door, they sort it out, they go upstairs, right? But to me, a lobby it should always be a prelude to the building. It should be speaking to what you've seen on the outside, and it should be the prelude to the rest of the building. So with the Watergate, when I interviewed for this, I knew it was the Luigi Moretti building, and I knew that Luigi Moretti was one of the 3 most important Italian architects of the 20th century. I had been to see his work in Milan. I had been to see his work in Rome. I had been to see the blockbuster show that Zaha Hadid did at the Maxi Museum when it opened. And I had the feeling that no one else who was interviewing had any idea who this was. The committee knew who it was, but I was coming in a position of kind of reverential. Now, luckily for me, Moretti didn't really do the lobbies. He did the kind of outside of the building. We got to interview some of the people who worked on the building, so I knew what he had done and what not. So when we did these lobbies, this was with Dave Mogensen in the office. We got to connect to the geometry of the Watergate. You know that the Watergate is a very fluid Baroque kind of building, and we got to do that on the interior with really good materials. The white is not drywall. The white is corian, so this thing is bulletproof. And it was, and I wanted to make a lobby. I think about this a lot. The lobbies like on Connecticut Avenue and down in Calorama, the lobby that was built with the building is still there. Now, lobbies are changed every 10 years in the newer buildings. It's a decorating project. I did not want to do decorating. I wanted to do a lobby. It was intrinsic to the building, and I hope they never change it. In Baltimore, where we were connecting another project with Dave Mogensen, 60,000 square feet of former they're not factories. It was called Parker Metal. They made cans for canning. Where we're connecting it, we were asked only to make the front entry, the long hall that connects the two entries, and the stairwell that takes people up through the lobbies. But if you look closely, you'll see the paint is still peeling on the old walls, that everything that was there is still there, and all we did was kind of work with that. So the saying I said under the context title, a card laid is a card played, is something I used to use in teaching all the time, that if there's a building already there, that's there. You can deal with it. The number of times you should take it down is really small. And by and large, you should be kind of working with that situation and building it up from there. Uniqueness, and I spoke to uniqueness of our clients and where they're from. By the way, I looked at my book this morning. 42 projects are in the book. 30% are owned by people who were not born in this country. And so they're bringing all that kind of cultural stuff. And I just feed on this. I mean, I just love this stuff. So uniqueness is kind of what is it about these houses, or these people, that makes that house unique, and how do you address it? And this first project is really one of my favorites. When we're interviewing for it, we're talking about what do you need, living room, dining room, kitchen, how many bedrooms, all that stuff. And they said, in a library. And I said, oh, I love libraries. Here we are. How many books? 40,000 books. That's a really big library. That we could put all the books in this room in this library. It's exquisitely detailed. Again, David Mogeson and Peter Noonan worked on it. Peter did the house and all up to including the library, and then David did some of the detailing in the library. The little floating glass room up at the top is a place where the husband likes to go and just kind of read and do whatever he's doing with 40,000 books. And it's put together like a Swiss watch. The tolerances on that are thinner than your fingernail. And it was, again, Added Dimensions built this, and it was beautifully put together. And so for another library, for a scholar who's writing about American statesmanship, Brad, you know this person, and I wanted to make a room of books. I wanted to make the walls be books, and where they weren't books, it would just be windows. And I've always loved this painting on the lower right. It's one of a whole series of paintings called St. Jerome in his study. And if you see a picture of St. Jerome, he will be in a study with a lot of books. And generally, there'll be a skull and a lion in the room with him at the same time. That's not in this picture, but it will be there. I have no idea why St. Jerome had a lion or a skull or books, or why he was sainted, and I don't want to know, because I love the stories I can make up about that. It's about collections. It's about what do people have that they love, and in these conversations, I need a living room, dining room, kitchen, show me some things or whatever. It was glass, and it was colorful art glass. And so in this house in Friendship Heights, we renovated only the main floor. We just brought the walls in and then hollowed them out and then put in the glass and lit it. We did it with long curvilinear walls. Because the walls were trying to go around things like powder rooms and stuff. And it made for this very fluid space. And of course, glass before it forms up is fluid. And for another project, this is the only apartment in the book. I wanted to do more, but they didn't really want to do. That's a different book. This is for a couple who just moved to a high-rise in Bethesda, one of the new ones. Kind of a beautiful space, a 40-foot long wall of windows, but she was retiring from running a private art gallery in her house, and she was bringing along all the stuff she had left that she loved, and she knew exactly where it was going to go and what it was going to be, and so we measured it, we photographed it. Dave Mugginson photoshopped it all. So every time we met with them, the art was in the drawings. Plus or minus a zero in dimension. So when they hung the art, it was done. And then finally, and the husband is here today. For this house, it's a house in Bethesda near BCC, where I went to high school. For the wife is an artist, a significant artist, and they wanted a studio in the back. And my feeling about doing that is that I want to see it from the house. I don't want to go in somebody's house and they say, by the way, I'm an artist. No, I don't want that, by the way. I want that. I want that integrated into what you're doing and into what we're doing as architects. So on the left is the studio. On the upper, no, that's the, well, you're seeing the outside courtyard. The lower right is the house from the street. We were trying to be soft. And then on the upper right is the studio. The door you see in the distance there is the front door to the house. So you come in the front door and you see all the way through to the art studio. There is no separation. There is no kind of disconnection there. Scale shifts. This is architects in this country are typecast, and it's actually a horrible thing and unique only to this country. So if you do houses, you will do houses. If you do office buildings, you will do office buildings. And if you do schools, you will do schools. The school person will not do a house. The house person will not do an office building, unless you do this long enough, which I've done. That you have clients you've worked for who need another kind of building, and then they say, well, I like what you did before, as Brad said, and it didn't fall down. So I guess you can do this thing. So our scale shifts have been through clients that we've already worked for. This on the left is a door in Brad's house. I wanted to be discreet about that. And then on the right is the cafe downstairs that we're all going to go to after this event. But the really kind of most fun part, in a way, was the offices. We also added to the bookstore. We did. If you go to the last bit of the bookstore, when they took over the dry cleaner, we added that part of the bookstore. And Brad was always clear. And pain in the ass is not fair, by the way. I did not use those. I did not use those words, and I have never used those words. I just now. No, I mean, I think an involved client. It's what do you want? So. Brad was very clear that when he and Lissa took over the Politics and Prose, which is a stupendous organization, that the whole sensibility, the whole aesthetic, and the whole feeling of it, it's kind of like an old sweater, that's the way I look at it, should not change. And there would be nothing slick. There would be, not that we would do slick, but that it would carry over seamlessly, in a way, into these other things. And where it kind of broke with that, because when we designed the offices, none of you see the offices. They're right there, by the way. We got to do the offices out of this dry cleaner thing. And the one story I'll tell you about this that I think is really fun is that when we tore out the walls and the partitions from the dry cleaner, which was really a ghastly place, we took all the lumber out, and Added Dimensions built this, and we remilled it, and we used it for all the lumber that went back in. And everything we took out, down to the piece that long, went back in. And that's how we determined what was going on. What do you got? That's what we have. And it was really fun. So I'm sorry, jumping ahead, pointer. All of that came out of the dry cleaner. All of that came out of the dry cleaner. And it was like a cut and fill. It was really fun to do that. We've done that a couple times recently. And it sort of goes with something I'm believing more and more. There's enough stuff in the world. A lot of it's in the wrong place. A scale shift that actually went in reverse that I think is really quite interesting. We were hired to do this office building on the right. I have to say that when we were in the interview, I didn't really get around to mentioning that we'd never done an office building. I mean, you don't have that much time. So we did this fabulous building, which I'll talk to, and Peter Noonan and Dave Mogensen worked on this for years. It's perfect. But then they liked that, and they asked us to do the house, which I'm not going to show today. But the office building is renovation of some 60s warehouses in Rockville, adding a story, gutting the whole inside. And when I talk about uniqueness earlier, there's nothing unique about an office building. It's full of people doing things you can't see. And I wanted to pull as much of what was behind closed doors out into this main lobby as I could. The elevator, the stairs, 2 suspended conference rooms. There's a kitchen opening to it down below. So I remember once when I was teaching at Catholic University, we held our studio in that little room. And my son was there the same day. We were photographing. He was flying a drone around the room, taking pictures. He made a movie. But, so what's going on in the building is visible. It's not a K Street office building where you walk in, there's a guy, there's a directory, you're done. And I never want to design a building like that. Another scale shift that we're working on right now, we did this townhouse in Cleveland Park. We renovated mostly the main floor, where we took out every wall and replaced it with cabinets. So everything is storage. It's just a simple idea that you don't need walls, you need stuff. And down below, they have decided to go into the distillery business. I keep saying, no, people who know me, I should do a winery, but not that. It's a distillery. So Peter knows all about distillery now because he's designing this one, or he's working on this one, and that is in design right now. When we did a house for Ruth Gresser and Barbara Johnson, Ruth owns Pizzeria Paradiso. I never say that right. And Barbara Johnson runs something called Artworks, which is an art school in Hyattsville. And we had done their house years ago. This is the house. I'm not really going to talk that much about it, except it combined a lot of art and the ability to host fundraisers with serious cooking happening with 5 chefs in the kitchen at the same time. So when Barbara wanted to open Artworks, which is this nonprofit art school in Hyattsville, she bought this flower shop, which is the brick building, and then we added to that, renovated it, and then Ruth came in and on the profit side put in a pizza place. So it was a public-private kind of this makes sense kind of thing, and kind of a labor of love. Special things, there are certain things we like to do all the time. If there's a stair in a building, we're going to beat it to death. And we have done hundreds of stairs and never done the same one twice. The stairs are exciting to me. It's where you move up and down through the building. It's where you engage your body more. It's a little more dangerous, so you pause and look around. And the craft of putting them together is really. I just pointed to some people who are doing a great stair for. Sorry. So it's just the kind of thing that we always do. You can buy a stair off the shelf. You can do that. We would never do that. So in this house, which is on the Eastern Shore, and 2 very, very successful professionals each needed a home office, one above the other. One of them has a James Beard Award, by the way. And so we made a tower in the middle of this long house. That we didn't design the house, just the tower. And then we kind of invaded the rest of the spaces. We didn't. So anyway, the stair became important and exciting. And as you go up and you commute to work, it's important. 2 stairs that we've done in the last few years. The one on the right is for the Georgetown house for bachelor number 3, who finally let us design the stair. Bachelor number 1 and 2 wouldn't let us touch it. And so it's put together, again, like jewelry, and I think that the detailing is really very special. Colleen Healy worked on this one, too. On the left, a project that Jeff McInturff worked on is a house in Cleveland Park with where the house is, the stair, it's a renovation, was put right in the center of the house. And they have 5 kids, all under the age of not very old. And I never watched the Brady Bunch, but apparently the stair and the kids and the Brady Bunch and everybody coming down the stairs was like a big deal. And I imagine that the call for come to dinner is like people just tromping down the stairs. So that was it for what set me off in designing this stair. This cat, when Julie and I photographed this thing, this cat is a maniac and was all over the stair, never on the floor, jumping and flying. And after a while, I realized that Julie was taking all the pictures of the cat. And then another project I work on with Colleen, a Georgian house in Northwest Washington. It's a center hall house. I love center hall houses. You come in the front, you go out the back. It's just like Mount Vernon. You understand the house and how to move through it. This house, we were able to, we gutted the house. But there's a 4-story stair because it goes from the basement through all the way up to the attic. And we had, I will say, the budget here to craft it any way we wanted. And when we do that, we bring in our favorite woodworkers and our favorite steel people who work on a lot of these things. Another project that Jeff McInturff worked on in Somerset, and I think there's an important point about this one. It was a one-story house in Somerset's very pretty neighborhood, and everyone was going in and putting up these kind of blockbuster spec houses and big additions and stuff like that. It's losing its kind of thing. So we had to add a fair amount of space, but we put it all in the back, right? And then we just took the roof straight up with it, and so that, from the street it's still a discrete house, and from the back it's something different. And then there's this kind of choreography of how you move up and through the house, so that the stair is something that we kind of ran with. Running toward the end of what I'm going to do, holding things up, which is like that column, holding up buildings, is important, and we make architecture out of it. We do that 100% of the time. In a recent house we did for a builder for her own house. She went to MIT, graduated from MIT, decided to be a builder in a beachfront community, not exactly something that women have taken over, and she owns the place. She's the best builder there, so she had done 6 or 7 projects with us. She said, I guess you can do my house. So we did, and it was, at the center of it was this moment here where the screen porch meets the house, where we actually had intended to cover that up and have wrap it all up in wood or something like that. And she and I stood on that porch, and we just kind of looked at each other and said, we're not doing that. And so this is, to me, the most powerful part of the house. This is my own weekend house. I think is that in focus? Okay, let's say it is. It's a tiny house, 1,700 square feet. I had a limited footprint that the county would let me build on. It was based on a previous house that had been there, and we had to dig up the ruins of that house, measure it, take it to the county, show them the footprint, and they said, okay, that's your footprint. And I said, well, that's great. So I want to have a pool and some decks and stuff. And Mr. McInturff, you don't understand. That's your footprint. Anything you do on this site fits in that footprint. That house would fit in this room twice. So everything had to go on top. So the decks and the porches and everything, and on top is a swimming pool, because I wanted a pool. And I don't like no for an answer. So it was a little bit hard-headed, but and so you're saying, well, how much does that water weigh? What's kind of an equivalent to that? It's 21,000 pounds. So what is 21,000 pounds? What would that mean to you in a graphic term? That would be 7 Toyota Priuses, which at the time we made this drawing, which is about 10 years ago, was all the colors that Priuses came in. And today I was meeting with a client who's also putting a pool on the roof. It's only the second time I've done it. They're here today. And it's a bigger pool, and I'm thinking they're going to have to be more colors of Priuses if we're going to do this. Otherwise, we can't make the big pool. That's how that works. Inside Out is about, the promises of modernism really had to do with the connection of inside and out. I'm not going to dwell too much on this. These are how can you not? Anyway, it's about places to be outside. I'll have to leave it at that. And then it's also about the connection from inside to out, where you're able to open up walls and so forth. My favorite in that sense is this one here, because there are windows that fold away here, and out here there are screens that drop out of the ceiling, so you can open the windows, drop the screens. You can close the windows, drop the screen, you've got a screen porch. You can open it all and the whole thing's a porch. You can do about 7 different variations with just these 2 things. It's like having a really convertible car, and that's how they use it. This is near my house on the Eastern Shore. And then on here you see Jeff and Julia from the office when they were a little bit younger, sitting in this screen porch. You'd retract the screen into here, and you can dangle your feet in the water of this tiny pool. This house it was really a challenge. It's a wonderful house, one of my favorites. It's in Northwest Washington. You could build exactly where we built, not an inch this way, not an inch that way. And they wanted a 75-foot swimming pool, which I'd never done. I've done a lot of pools, never 75, but okay. And I thought about the houses in Charleston. If you've ever been to Charleston, what they do there, and it's called the Charleston House, is a long, thin house, and the street's here, so the short sides to the street, a garden, another long, thin house, a garden, another long, thin house. It is such a beautiful idea. It is so stupid that it's never been picked up, but we did, because we had to back our house up against the south side and then pull away given our setbacks, and so the house along its length, and you can see in the middle picture, best I think, along its length opens to the pool and the garden. We do the same thing with multifamily. We don't do a lot of multifamily, only when it's interesting. Where here we had 8 units of multifamily, and I said to the developer, the first meeting, I said, you want 8 units? Let's do 4 here and 4 here, and put a courtyard in the middle. This is not hard. And in school, we were always taught 1 + 1 = 3. Okay, there should be an advantage to making the second thing. So that's really what was happening here. And in a recently finished accessory dwelling unit, these are hot right now, and I think they make a lot of sense except when they don't. Here they did, and it's about kind of making a dialogue between the new building and the old building and the space between them. Again, David Mogensen worked on this one with me. A little last bit on things to come. Here are 4 houses, 3 of which are under construction. A house that Jeff is doing in Northern Virginia that is pretty far along. Below that, a house that Dave and I are working on in Bethesda that is very far along. A house in Deep Creek that Julia and I are working, and Peter Noonan on the upper right that we visited the other day and almost done. And then we're just starting design on another house in Deep Creek Lake. It's very different because it's not anywhere near the lake, it's on a mountain. And tell a little story here. We couldn't tell what the view was going to be because it's in a forest. And we knew the lake was out there, and we didn't want to build a house and have it face that way, and the lake is over there. So we got a drone to fly up and take a bunch of pictures and give us all the orientations, and now we know exactly what we're looking at above the trees. This is a building that Peter and Dave and I have been working with for a long time. Peter's the project architect. It's in Georgetown at the intersection of Wisconsin and Prospect. If you know where Zara used to be, it's that building. The white building is that. It's everything you see except the Cafe Milano building is right here. So this stuff is all new, and this all here is renovation. It's big. It's East Bank, who is the best developer in Washington, is building it and going to occupy the offices. So at the bottom, it's retail, which is all in works. Then East Bank's offices, and on top 5 or 6 residential units. I was telling Brad, it's no longer love in the time of cholera, it's building in the time of COVID. Has been a bear. And all of you, and I see many of my clients here, know it. This has been just very, very difficult. It's going to be great. It's going to be done in about a month. We're all looking forward to that. And then the last project I'm going to show, this is very near and dear to my heart. I have this second house on the Eastern Shore. This is in St. Michael's, the St. Michael's Community Center. About 6 years ago, they asked me to just come and look at the building, and I looked at the building, and I said what you're all thinking. That's a 5-aisle basilica, right? You know, that's what that is. And they looked at me like I was nuts. And so a basilica is anything you want it to. Well, barns are basilicas sometimes. Some barns are basilicas. Lots of Gothic cathedrals are basilicas. So it's a very flexible kind of. St. Peter's is a basilica. In fact, it's called the Basilica of St. Peter. So here was this building, and I did a little initial study. We made a model. I said, I'm not going to charge you for any of this. This is just to get you started. And for 5 years, they didn't have the people to kind of make that happen. Then those people turned up. Not rich people, but people who could fundraise. People who could go to the state and say, we need $500,000, and the state would say to them, we're not giving you $500,000. We're giving you $1 million. And that's the response it's had. It's under construction now. So this is, it used to be a lumberyard shed. This is the building about 2 weeks ago. And this is what it's going to be in, 9 months, something like that. I think that's the last project. I'm just going to talk for 1 second about what we're going to do now. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to sign books. Again, if I've worked for you or if you have worked on our buildings, your money isn't good here, put it on a list up there, and I will take care of that. I'll be signing books here, and this is the one I did for Brad and for Lissa. When I sign, I make a sketch, and if I built your house, it's of your house. So I'm going to be here a while. But I have magic markers, and I know how to use them. So anyway, this has been a very, very warm event for me. Thank you. I think there's time for questions, but there don't have to be. So we have 15 minutes for questions. Oh, if you got to go to the mic up here. Oh, Ms. Stanley.
Hi there. You mentioned that you were teaching at Catholic University. I know you're very busy at your work, and I know you didn't do that for the money. Why did you get back into teaching through all of this?
Why didn't I get back?
Why did you get back into teaching, and what did you get out of that?
Teaching is The question was, why did I get into teaching? I taught for a long time. I taught both at the University of Maryland and at Catholic University, and I always did it in a very reduced capacity, sometimes just one day a week, one semester a year. And I always found it invigorating and challenging, and I enjoyed it, but there just got to be the point where I had to make a decision. I just had to say, I can only do one of these things, and I'm pretty sure I'm a better architect than teacher, so I'm just going to run with my strength. Any, yeah. You have to come up to the microphone. They made me say that.
Do you like new projects or renovating better?
Yeah. It's interesting because when you start a practice, it's very hard to get a new house to do because you haven't done one. And if you haven't done one, you can't do it. And so now we've done, 50 new houses or something like that. And I like feeding off what's there. And occasionally I will look at a building and I'll say, this is hopeless. Not only do I not want to work on it, you should get rid of it. You should sell it and move on right now. There's nothing that can be done with this. But other than that, I'm comfortable with both situations. Yeah, I think you have to go up there again. I just want to say that my granddaughter Anna has been really, really good. Yeah. Wave to the people, Anna. Just wave. They're applauding for you. There she is. She's perfect.
So, Mark, you did our house about 30 years ago. And now I look at this book and I see you've been doing a few things since then. And on the way over here, I was saying to my wife, a lot of musicians, they do their best work in their 20s and 30s, and then they seem to run out of inspiration. And she said, yeah, the same with scientists. Does that not apply to architects?
It applies to some architects. I work very hard to not have. If I for a moment thought it was applying to me, I would quit, and I have no intention of quitting ever. So, yeah. Okay. David Hutner, we did his house 30 years ago, and he has this little screen porch with Julia and Jeff's feet dangling in the water in the backyard. That was their retirement present to themselves, which I'm doing a lot of, by the way. These retirement presents. It's a nice thing.
I'm sorry?
These retirement presents. The wife gives. I just finished. The wife got a house renovation. The husband got a studio, and then in between was a garden that they shared. So I like that. Okay, I think I answered everything. Well, let's put it this way. I told you everything I know. So I'm going to sit here for as long as it takes. The cafe is open. It's an open bar. This is all McInturff Architects picking up the tab again. Please stay and hang out and talk and stuff, and and come up and sign the book now or later or whatever it is. This is my home turf. Thank you.